Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live Tech Talk. Whose roadmap is it anyway? Breaking free from vendor lock-in and reclaiming control of your IT strategy. This event was organized by the hardworking folks at Redmond Magazine, and it's sponsored by US Cloud, the world's only independent third-party provider of a complete replacement for Microsoft Premier and Unified Support. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of the Converge 360 Group of 1105 Media, and I'm joined today by our old friend, Mike Jones, who is he's an enterprise software expert and one of our favorite subject matter experts. Hi, Mike.
Hey, John. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, man. During his 26 years in the IT space, Mike has served as a senior systems administrator, a lead systems engineer / architect, a Microsoft design architect, and a senior solutions architect, effectively spanning the Microsoft corporate partner ecosystem. As I say, Mike is one of our favorite subject matter experts, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But before we get going, I need to do just a bit of housekeeping. This Tech Talk is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now on your console. And at the end of this conversation, we'll have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. Please type your questions into the Q&A box as they occur to you, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. Now, during this webinar, I'll be talking with Mike about how large software vendors shape upgrade cycles and support models in ways that don't always align with customer goals. We'll explore the hidden costs of vendor lock-in, share real-world examples of its impact, and discuss smarter strategies for building an IT roadmap driven by your business, not your vendors. Okay, Mike, let's start with the elephant in the room. When we say vendor lock-in, what does that actually look like for most IT leaders today?
Yeah, well, I think, I'll go even a further step back. It's good to understand when we're talking about a roadmap and kind of the title of today's discussion, it's important to understand what the core differences are between the two, right? There's what we call a business-driven roadmap, and there's a vendor-driven roadmap. And we'll talk about the lock-in part as part of this. So really what's important to note is on the education side, a business-driven roadmap really starts with business objectives. It's a company, it's an entity, it's an IT organization where they are looking at what are the objectives of the business, what are the outcomes that we are trying to solve for on our customers, whether that's internal or external customers, and internal priorities as far as what aligns the business with the technology adoption accordingly. That's a business-driven roadmap where really the business is taking hold and saying, these are the things that we are identifying as either challenges or opportunities within our organization around technology adoption. And how do we solve for those and plan for the future around those initiatives and outcomes we are trying to drive? Business outcome, business roadmap. Vendor-driven, really, my definition of that is really what starts with, and since we're specifically talking Microsoft today, it's around Microsoft. It starts with Microsoft's release cycle, right? So things like licensing incentives or technology releases of new products. Microsoft will then release these products, release these, I would say, programmatical changes. So like licensing changes that they're doing right now around discounting tiers with their EA. That's a good example where then they try to plug that into your business. New product comes out, let's go in and plug it into a business. We're going to force this into our customer. I guess maybe force is a strong word, but it's realistic. When the lock-in comes in is when you're locked in to a contractual obligation to that vendor, specifically Microsoft, and from there it's long-term. So the products that they are releasing within this term of agreement, they are associating that to the cost or that you're purchasing. So you're tied, what we call as tying. They're tying your overall contract of what you're buying to new adoption of technologies. A perfect example would be like Copilot. In the last couple of years, Microsoft is bundling Copilot into EAs and licensing so that you're forced to adopt it because the cost that you're presenting to the customer is so very very vast in cost. You have to adopt that to see any type of ROI on the technology itself and the cost that you're paying for. So being locked in, quote unquote, means that you're forced into a partner or a provider's set of product stack coming down whatever said cadence or frequency that is. Let's say it's 1 year or it's a 5 year. You're locked into that that vendor's product set that they're releasing, and it takes away the customers or the business's ability to really make decisions outside of the technology. What's best for our business? Nope. It's here's the product stacks that we've already invested in ahead of time. We need to plan for those. We have to find a way to utilize those based on the cost that we've invested in those products.
Okay, so you've worked with organizations across different industries. Can you sort of paint us a picture of how a typical vendor-dictated roadmap unfolds in real time?
Yeah, so let's look at this. When we're talking about Microsoft, here are some of the, I would say, top things that are impacting customers across the Microsoft vendor-driven roadmap. So things like Microsoft product life cycles. So those would be like all these software that they release, the end of life announcements where they say, hey, we're putting a time frame on all of our products where they will only support or provide updates for those up to a certain period of time. So end of life announcements, mandatory migrations that they're forcing upon customers recently. And there's things all out there about the EA changes that they're doing, not only from a pricing and discount perspective, but the actual logistical changes that they're doing to EAs as they're taking EAs away from your LSPs, the licensing providers, and they're going direct to customer. They're also forcing customers under what their perceived threshold is from EA over to MCA. So they're grandfathering in a few large corporations, but outside of that, EAs are a thing of the past. They're too mundane. There's too much administrative overhead to track them, and from an internal Microsoft system perspective, they're archaic. They are wanting to get away from that. So now they're forcing people from EA to an MCA. There's things like Teams, right? They're forcing the Teams perspective. They separated that out kind of from their Microsoft 365 licensing. And now if you want to utilize Teams to its full capabilities like phone and voice capabilities, it's a separate license, right? So these little changes that they're making within the ecosystem change that product life cycle. New feature launches, right? They come out, like I said, Copilot is one. Fabric is another one. Intra, they're evolving Azure Intra AD to customers. So these new feature launches are a vendor-driven input. They are forcing you to adapt and change or scale to what their plan is. Licensing programs, to go back to that. So the CSP aspect. So now partners can sell licensing, and they put guardrails and restrictions around some of their capabilities. The MCA talk that I talked about a minute ago, EA to MCA, the Microsoft customer agreements are going to change customers' ability to negotiate not only discounts and pricing, but the overall structure of the licensing that they can purchase. There's MAC agreements. There's Azure commit. So MAC agreement is basically a Microsoft Azure commit. So you're committing to consume over a future period of time so much Azure infrastructure or licensing based on a discount contract. So they're forcing you to adopt X amount of Azure over a certain period of time in order to just save a few dollars and cents on that. Now, some of those discounts can be very significant, but again, your cost is going up with that as well because you're adopting that more Azure consumption equals a bigger discount, but overall your cost is still going to rise. Another thing that I would say from a vendor-driven input is really around the Microsoft sales tactics, their plays, and their partner programs. So they incentivize partners based on these technologies that they want to target, like Copilot and Azure consumption and Microsoft Fabric. They're going to incentivize the partners to go and do what I would call the dirty work for them and go sell those and make customers adopt it. And again, it might seem like it's a positive thing, but if you actually look at it, they're baiting you and they're forcing you. And again, they're tying you into these products, not only contractually, but from a sales play.
Okay, this might be a weird question, but was there a moment when you realized that many IT strategies were actually serving the businesses, were not serving the businesses they were supposed to support?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes, and it's not a shocking question, by the way. The answer is yes. The writing was on the wall as I was, again, you know, in your intro, I've been around the IT space for almost 30 years now. And I started off as a gearhead, so I'm proud to say I was an engineer and have kind of moved into more thought leadership side from a leadership standpoint. But I was in the trenches, and I saw that in the early 2000s when I kind of came up, and I hate to date myself, you know, around the NT days, NT4. I was around the Windows 2000, both server and that revolution. So I've been around for a long time, and honestly, it was happening back then where. Yes, it was more of a, I would say, not so much a transactional relationship. It was more of a true partnership, but it had some elements of this vendor-driven roadmap scale. And as customers and technology have both evolved, customers have gotten smarter, more educated on how technology works and the inner workings of sales tactics with your OEM providers. And you've got also on this side where the partnerships have kind of evolved to such a mass encompassing of all these millions of companies. There's the relationship aspect is less and the transactional has become more. So again, you start to see this a long time ago already start to happen, like, hey, what is the bright, shiny toy? Oh, well, you know, as an old early 2000s and late 90s IT administrator and engineer, the way that you consume that technology is by saying, oh, look at this new product. I need to find a way to insert this into my business because it can do X, Y, and Z. And I need to change the way that we do things within our IT organization to match what this product claims it can do for the business. Now, as customers get smarter again, and they get more, I would say, in tune with how those products work, our perspective needs to shift. It needs to shift to more of, here's the outcomes or the challenges I'm trying to solve for. Don't look at a product to come in and solve those issues. You need to have a very clear direction on what you're trying to solve from a business perspective or a customer perspective and adopt in different ways to that organization to solve for those outcomes, whether it be a product or whether it be a strategy shift. It's many different things that can encompass that, and customers need to be aware of that. But yeah, this has been happening ever since I joined IT back in '98.
Wow. Okay, walk us through a specific example without naming names if you can't, where you've seen a company's innovation efforts get derailed by vendors' upgrade timeline.
I would say from that standpoint, without naming names, of course, you will have new business leaders come in. You see this a lot in today's landscape where companies, right, wrong, indifferent, they're trying to innovate in many different ways. In part, one of those areas of innovation could be, let's bring in new blood, new set of eyes, new perspectives. And although I'm never against change. I'm against change just for the sake of change. So there's a difference in my mind. So when you look at that, I have seen companies come in with fresh set of ideas, and they want to pivot from a complete 180. So they're here and they pivot all the way over here versus incrementally saying, what are the top initiatives I need to solve for? And eventually moving down the ladder a little bit. It's one huge shift, completely flipping over into another thing. So example, like your cloud initiative. So the on-prem, the traditional data center conversation that happened 20 years ago, shifting to cloud, right? So it's that huge shift. Some customers jumped so far down into it that they just ripped out their data centers, ripped out all their traditional hardware systems, and just went all into the cloud right away. Well, they found a lot of challenges in doing so, and it took a step back for many companies where a lot of those organizations saw their IT operation, which is a cost center. We all know that, right? But there's value in IT organizations within businesses where they saw a huge shift, and they would see 100, 200, 300% increases in their IT cost for these services going to the cloud versus taking their time and letting other people be the tip of the spear. I'm all for leading edge technology and jumping into it from an education standpoint. It doesn't make the most sense to deploy that within your organization. Not always. And I've seen some pretty large customers fall on the sword, if you will, proverbially, by trying to innovate to the point that it cost them what their outcomes were what I call their character, right? They had a vision for this, and it cost them that because they jumped so far in without incrementally implementing these changes.
Okay, speaking of names, U.S. Cloud's focus is on providing a complete replacement for Microsoft Premier and Unified Support. What makes Microsoft's approach problematic for enterprise customers?
Well, it's a couple of different things. One, again, Unified Support. So from a Microsoft standpoint, Unified Support is based on your overall spend of licensing in 3 categories: server, user, cloud. And from that total spend, Microsoft basically has a tiered structure where they take a percentage of each of those 3 categories, put those together, and provide you with a cost. So it's no longer a needs-based model. It's simply put, how much am I spending for the licensing equals how much per year I'm going to pay for support. Well, if you just take the last 5 minutes of our discussion in a vendor-driven roadmap scenario, which exists today, and apply that to this theory, what do you think is going to happen? My cost for support is going to skyrocket year over year due to the fact that I am following the vendor's roadmap of adopting these new technologies and services, which then it raises my cost of overall licensing, which then in turn, the next sales cycle or renewal term impacts year by year my support cost. So it's going to continue to skyrocket. Doesn't matter how smart your teams are, doesn't how smart your IT organization is. You're going to pay a cost based on just what you're purchasing, not your need for support. Whereas our model, US Cloud's model, is a consumption model based on need for support. You buy the hours you need for support over a given period of time, to get through the support that you actually need. What challenges do you need help with? What gaps are you trying to fill? And that's really where the biggest difference comes down between that problematic support option that customers are trying to fill versus the cost skyrocketing year over year.
Okay, so when you talk about forced upgrades, help our audience understand what that pressure actually feels like from an IT leader's perspective.
From an IT leader's perspective, I would say the forced upgrades conversation comes down to pressure tactics. Again, contractually, they're obligated. Those MAC agreements are a perfect example where I've already invested. The writing on the wall is there. It's contractual. It's bound that I am going to consume X amount of Azure infrastructure and licensing on any given year basis. So when you take that from an IT leader standpoint, you've already wrote the check. It's been cashed. Why aren't you using it? So the business tends to look at, well, we invested in this service, this product. You need to implement said product, and you need to show us a return on our investment for these products that we've purchased. And again, that's what I would call the forced upgrade scenario, where you've spent the money. It's like going to a car dealership and buying a new car, but leaving it on the dealership lot for a year before you decide to go and pick it up. Well, I've got my car. I'll just use that until it breaks down, and then I'll go pick up the car I bought a year ago. Who does that? No one. And it's the same thing in IT, where you have to look at it from that perspective. The purchase you're making, if it's not an imminent purchase, you need to be very cautious and careful on how you do that, because vendors like Microsoft, they're making you invest upfront and pay for it upfront, regardless of when your IT organization or your business is ready to employ or go live with that service.
Okay, you've said that staying locked in is actually riskier than breaking free. That kind of goes against conventional wisdom. Can you explain what you might call a paradox?
Yeah. So from that perspective, I would say look at it this way. If your business is not singly using one OEM, and please name me one organization that uses one OEM product in the tech space, and I'll take my words back if you can provide me with one. If you're using a multi-OEM diversification in your technology adoption services, it's not looked at as a paradox. In order to break free, I have to look at what are the needs of the business I'm trying to solve. The ownership of those decisions should stay within the business leaders and the technology leaders associated to that said business. It's not looked at. I mean, it's shift your perspective, I would say. It's not a paradox. You want the liberty to go out there and evaluate as many providers as you can if there's competitive analysis that needs to happen. You want to be able to trial those and build your internal requirements from an IT perspective internally. You want to be able to budget for said. You want a budget that stays consistent with your year-to-year budgetary needs. So you need it to be completely independent of consumption or contract negotiations and support. Those are the two big things that companies need to separate. Separate your licensing power and your decisions on the licensing purchase versus the need for support. The problem is that a lot of these vendors will bundle them together and they'll lock you in, or what they call co-terming your licensing contract with your support contracts. Now, I'm not saying those companies out there like the Cisco's or any VMware or AWS specifically, they all kind of do a similar approach to that, but a lot of them are different than how Microsoft does it. From a standpoint of, you don't have to buy the support if you have the in-house talent to support said product. Where that really comes in, it's more of a warranty conversation around like Cisco hardware. I need to be able to replace that hardware if the hardware goes bad, right? And again, back to the automotive reference, I'll take the manufacturer's warranty, even though I'm a mechanic, because I've paid for that car, and they should be responsible over a period of time that that hardware is going to work as designed. It's a very similar approach where instead of unbundle, untie those together, and you're breaking free from the vendor-driven practices that are occurring today, where they're automatically telling you, hey, if you combine these two together, it's not only in your best interest, but we'll give you a better discount. And the reality is, no, they're not. You're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. So they're bundling those together, and the costs are all underlying. You're not getting any type of larger discount by co-terming those together. It just visually, it looks like that. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so what's the most shocking example you've encountered of hidden costs that organizations didn't see coming?
Well, I'll give you one example that I can think of off the top of my head. It came around the Copilot initiative and adoption around 2 years ago. So we had a very large organization that had a very tight relationship with Microsoft. I would say they're on the S500, so they're a large Fortune 50 customer. And what happened is during their renewal period for their EA, Microsoft threw the bright shiny toy in front of them, which was Copilot for 365. Right. Now, anyone that is familiar, which most of your listeners are, around licensing costs with Copilot, it doubles right off the top. It doubles your 365 licensing cost. In the older model, which is still present, it was around $30 per user per month for a 365 E3 license. Okay, so if we take that as just an example, median, the cost to add Copilot for 365 licenses was also $30 per user per month. So just adopting that right off the bat doubles your user cost for 365. Now, what happened was large Fortune 50 customer with 100,000 employees bit on that bullet based on a 30% discount, and Microsoft was going to provide them year one and year two. So they came in, bit that bullet. They weren't ready to adopt Copilot. They didn't have strategy design in there. They were just like, we're going to turn it on and figure out how to use it. We've already paid for it. We know it's coming down the line. So we just decided, let's just buy it now. We're getting a 30% discount, but they were not ready for it. So what happened was there was all these costs associated to that they didn't realize out of the gate when their EA renewed that they're paying for Copilot. They're paying for it. And they were a year and a half, at least a year and a half away from a full organizational rollout. So they paid for this for a year and a half on their costs. Oh, and by the way, because as you're starting to adopt, what they didn't realize was it impacted their unified support costs. Because again, to go back, remember, unified, it's tied to your overall licensing consumption and spend. So then year two, when their support renewal, so they knew, okay, we realized, we weren't ready for Copilot. All right, year and a half before we actually deploy it. All right, we'll bite that bullet on the licensing side. What they didn't realize was year two, their unified support costs jumped 300% based on that one initiative in adoption. So not only were they a year and a half away, but 12 months into it, they paid the piper exponentially on the support when their support contract came back 300% higher for year two. Oh, and by the way, this customer co-termed their EA with their support and locked into a 3-year support agreement with their EA. They were stuck. So they had no out from Microsoft on the support side. They were locked in on the cost on the EA, and then it went up 300%. year over year for year 2 and 3 on their support contract. So they lost millions, dozens of millions of dollars total from that play. Whereas I think from a business-driven roadmap, I think the decisions would have been different. They wouldn't have felt like it was a forced upgrade like we mentioned earlier. They wouldn't have been locked into the vendor-driven roadmap. It would have given the customer flexibility to add as needed, or maybe purchase a subset of licenses for their testing and go live performance, and then adopt incrementally. Again, going from here incrementally over to here is the right play. Don't just jump into the deep end and then go from here straight to here. There's too many things and variables. This cost is just one of them. There's support, right? How is my IT organization going to train and be able to support this product? Because a lot of those new technologies, those engineers have to learn the product before they can support it, right? You can't build the plane while you're flying it. It's not going to work out for you. So it's just, it baffles me at times how customers feel forced into making those decisions and implementing those products because the vendor is telling them, and that's how they're trying to make money. They're a for-profit company, and you know that, but being forced into that, customers are smarter than that, and they need to take a step back and take control of those decisions and not let the vendor dictate what they should be doing. They should be focusing on a business-driven roadmap. They should be looking for cost optimization on their product sets. You know, perfect example, ask Microsoft to go in and run a cost optimization on your Azure infrastructure. Do you think they're going to provide that out of the gate for you? Are they going to provide you with end-of-life support? If no, you can buy extended support on their products, but once it hits that 10-year mark, you're on your own. They are not providing you with any type of support on those products after the end-of-life date. You want Microsoft to come in and do an EA licensing audit for you? Do you think they're going to do that? Do you think they're going to come in and say, hey, it's been a couple of years since we sold you your EA and licensing. Let's go do an EA analysis on consumption versus purchased. Like, are you consuming everything you purchased? Or is there a big gap between what you bought and what you're using? No, they're not going to do that. And that's where partners really provide a lot of value to customers like US Cloud, where we're coming in and we're not looking, we don't work for the OEM, we work for the customer. Our job is to come in and provide value out of the gate for customers. And these are examples of how we can do that for those organizations.
Okay, so how do you help IT leaders calculate the true cost of compliance with vendor roadmaps versus the opportunity cost of alternatives?
Okay, so I like to say it's really kind of 5 milestones. From a business-driven aspect, we have to determine your strategic goals. What's your growth? What's your customer experience look like? How can we improve that? What are the areas of shortcoming around IT that your customers are experiencing today? How do we reduce cost? Cost reduction is a huge thing. We need to be able to come in and show you cost reduction versus year over year increase in your spend. Compliance, obviously you touched on that, is a big thing. How do we remain compliant? You may have different segments in different markets, right? You have healthcare with HIPAA. You have international customers with GDPR and DPA requirements. You have government with their compliancy, whether it's NIST or whether it's a corporate customer with ISO. There's all these compliancy standards that need to be in place. And yes, I'm not saying Microsoft doesn't provide compliancy assistance. They're very focused on just their product stack. Like, hey, by the way, Azure is compliant for FedRAMP. Okay, great. What about my Cisco hardware infrastructure? What about my networking infrastructure? It's a very siloed approach where partners can provide additional value where it transcends just the Microsoft stack. And the other area, so area number 2 that I would say from a business-driven roadmap perspective is the trends and regulatory needs. You need a partner that understands the industry trends. Where are industries in your similar area going with technology? What are the things that they are doing? And what regulatory needs would you have in each of those silos? The third thing I would say of my milestones is kind of what are your current IT focuses and business pain points? Have you documented all of the business's challenges with technology in your current infrastructure and organization today? Have you roadmapped where your current IT challenges are coming from? Are you spending too much time managing or supporting a particular vendor infrastructure deployment that you did? Like, is it your Oracle? Is it Microsoft? Is it your Exchange? You know, even to jump in, let's stay focused on Microsoft. Is your email environment providing you with multiple challenges, both to the business and IT? You need to have those documented and you need to look at those from a business-driven roadmap, because that's going to help you make decisions on that aspect. ROI or TCO modeling for each initiative. That's the next thing I would say from a business-driven roadmap. You need to look at ROI and total cost of ownership for each large initiative or project that you're implementing within your organization. It's a best practice to do that each and every one. Even if you think it's a small impact, it could have huge ramifications to cost and support that you're not aware of. So doing those ROIs and TCO models on all of your IT initiatives will help you. Yes, I know it's a challenge. It's a big undertaking. It's a big headache for a lot of people, but it's an important factor as you're budgeting IT cycles each year. And then the last one really is end user and customer feedback. You need a continuous improvement feedback loop. It's super important where I'm shocked that I go into customers when I do consulting and talk about, well, what kind of continuous improvement feedback loop do you have? Are you getting continuous end user and or customer feedback on the product or service you're providing? Are you doing it in multiple ways that's providing you with true insight and KPIs on how that service is performing as expected or not as expected on the investment that you made? So those are kind of my 5 key areas. I mean, there's many more, but those are kind of the top 5 that I would say from a business-driven roadmap versus the vendor-driven roadmap that we talked about, where it's product lifecycle, it's feature launches of new products, it's Microsoft sales play. That's the big difference between the two of them.
Okay, how about a success story? Give us a story where a company successfully broke free from vendor lock-in. What did that transformation look like?
Well, here's what that looked like. Here's the example. Fortune 500 customer decides they're sick of the up to 300% year-over-year support costs. So we're just focusing on support because that's what we do. And decided we're going to look at outside options. We are tired of the year-over-year cost of the support that you would think if you're going to continue to pay that year-over-year, the support quality is going to continue to rise, right? I mean, it's common sense. You would just assume that. Well, no, it's not. We're going to provide you with this line of service year-over-year, but we're going to charge you this much year-over-year on the support cost. So Fortune 50 company, Fortune 500, I believe they are, decided we're going to look at external options. They looked at third party. They finally decided that there were options out there and broke free from the we're the only play in the game Microsoft mentality. Found out that there were other options more in a needs-based model. And instantly, and this is a real life scenario, we saved that customer almost 50% of their unified spend yearly based on the support need that they had, because they had very deep benches of IT engineering. They had very smart people, and they were able to only need X amount of support versus the unlimited model of Microsoft based on what they purchased. And so it made a lot of sense for them. They were able to save like I said, almost 50%. And for that company alone, that was close to $5 million per year, just in that one change. Then take same customer that you saved right off the top, almost 5 million on day one. We then came in and did an Azure cost optimization assessment, which was, for US Cloud, we do like 100-hour engagement. It's a 6-week engagement. It's very involved, where we were able to come in and save them 30% on their Azure infrastructure cost as well. So then they saved multiple $1 million on top of that. So total savings year one, when all was said and done, was close to $10 million in savings for that customer just on their Microsoft support. We're not even talking about their total IT budget. We're not talking about everything. We're just talking Microsoft here, just their Microsoft support. So it's pretty eye-opening when customers get that point finally, when you kind of, it settles in. Oh my gosh, there's multiple millions of dollars of savings each year just in my Microsoft support bucket that I can save, that then I can apply to other areas of the business. If it's still in IT, great. I can then go look at how to solve other business challenges within my IT or business operations. It's a huge freedom movement, I call it. We call it the rebellion. It's kind of like the Star Wars reference. We're like, join the rebellion. It might seem like we're the little guys, but we're saving you big dollars. So, it's the old Star Wars rebellion. Join it.
Okay, so what kind of pushback do you typically hear from executives when you suggest moving away from major vendor platforms?
Well, the first one's probably going to be the most common one is, why would I leave the OEM who makes the product? Shouldn't they support it?
Right.
And that one, I could debate around that very easily. I do it day in, day out. But, it's a valid, I would say, it's a valid concern for IT leaders to look at that and say, the OEM, I have a relationship. I've used Microsoft products for however long your business has been in play. But you've got to look at where the focus is. Those OEMs, and I'll just speak to Microsoft because that's my forte. Microsoft's, I would say, perspective, their intent is to sell products. They are a for-profit, they are a software company. They create software products and they sell said software products. They are not a services-oriented organization. They are not there to support you hand in hand and potentially save you money, or if the outcome doesn't meet the product, lead you to another competitor's product. They are there to sell you services, support software. That's what they do. So you've got to take it from that perspective is, maybe it's not the best idea to stick with the OEM for support. Maybe there's someone who has better, not only skill sets, but really matches what our outcomes and what we're trying to achieve. Like if our initiative is from the business to save 15% on our IT costs, sticking with the OEMs like Microsoft is not going to save you 15%. So you've got to look at alternative options like third-party support and services to fill that gap and find those savings.
Okay. When you talk about building a business-driven IT roadmap, what are the first 3 steps organizations should take?
So here's where I would go. First 3, I'll give you 3 to 5. Starts with your business strategy. Okay. So it really comes down to defining business outcomes. I need to reduce costs by 15% across the board. I need to optimize my licensing, consolidate vendors as part of that process. There's one example. Another example of defining those business outcomes would be, I need to improve collaboration and employee productivity. we see a dip in employee productivity going remote or whether you're in office. So you need to potentially rationalize your Teams and SharePoint adoption deployments to find ways to be more collaborative and more productive in the business. Another example would be I have to meet certain regulatory compliance. So adopting Microsoft Purview or Defender and Sentinel or secure, if you're a government entity or a contractor, I need to secure cloud governance. Those are examples of defining those business outcomes. So that's step one. Step two would be to map those capabilities, map your technical capabilities to those outcomes. So instead of, hey, Microsoft launched Copilot, let's buy it, right? No, frame that as, hey, we need to improve decision-making efficiently. Let's look at Copilot for finance and operations to help streamline decision-making with better data to make those decisions. It's a paradigm shift. It's not, hey, here's a new product, go buy it. That's the vendor roadmap. Watch yourself going down that rabbit hole. It's to, hey, we need to improve our decision-making efficiency. Maybe this product can assist us with data to make informed decisions. So that's step two. Step three would be like prioritize based on business value. You need to be able to prioritize from a business perspective, what is the value to the business? So use a value versus complexity matrix. I see customers do complexity matrices like, they'll say, here's all the things, here's the different teams that need to be involved, here's the overall testing period, here's the overall cost of ownership, whatever you want to do, your RACI charts. But really, I'm going to simplify that. From business value standpoint, prioritize based on that, which means use a value versus complexity, which means quick wins, strategic bets, right? So it's the quick wins versus strategic bets perspective. That's the complexity matrix. Go based on business value. What is the overall value to the business of this said software or product that I'm placing within my organization? Assign ownership to those to those business units, not just IT. Get the business involved in all of those initiatives. It might be owned by IT, but if you don't have buy-in and ownership and stakeholder from your business units and operations, that will fail. There will be a huge disconnect, and there'll be a dissension between those two organizations, which you need cohesiveness there. If IT forces a product that they didn't really get ownership and buy-in from the business, it will fail. I've seen it fail 100% of the time. And then my last step on that on that roadmap is overlay your vendor timelines only where necessary. And what I mean by that is factor in the support for things like end of life. So your Windows Server 2012, your SQL 2014, et cetera. You need to factor in the end of life for support of those products with the timelines of the business for new initiatives that impact those technologies. And another thing is align adoption of new Microsoft tools only if they serve a defined outcome. If we have identified an outcome of the business that aligns with adoption of this new Microsoft technology, your timelines they intersect and it works for the business. But don't let Microsoft or the vendor define when that timeline is based on new product rollouts. So those are kind of my 4 steps on how you start structuring a business roadmap.
Okay, but for companies that feel completely trapped, maybe they're deep into Microsoft's ecosystem, where do they even start?
Where you start is one, educating yourself on your contractual obligations to Microsoft, both on your licensing in EA or MCA or CSP, however you're purchasing it today. What are you contractually obligated to? Then second step is to look at what are my support costs. Are they tied to my purchasing decisions? Are they independent of said purchasing decisions? So being educated on the overall landscape, specifically with Microsoft, on where you even have decisions. You may have come in and you're locked into a 5-year EA with a 3-year locked in unified. Okay, it might feel like you're trapped, but there might be options for you. You might have out clauses in your support agreement. You might have yearly opt-out clauses as well, where some customers I've seen, they've written in 60-day opt-outs throughout the life of the contract. I've also seen it where it's yearly opt-out. So you're in for a year on a 3-year deal, but you can opt out year 2, year 3. Those are good ideas. Take a look at your contractual aspect, have your legal team work with you and see what your options are. That's step 1. Step 2 is evaluate the landscape. Look at third-party options. Take a hard look at them. You know where Microsoft is. That's done. Now go evaluate other potential providers like US Cloud that can provide a similar or like-for-like service. Find out all the details you can, fully vet that said partner as well. Go from there. That's step 1. Step 2 is start aligning yourselves with the business and really adopting or start with a business strategy. Where do we need to go in the next 3 to 5 years? What does our roadmap look like? Not what products will be coming out. What does our IT adoption strategy look like? What does our business roadmap look like in the next 3 to 5 years? Have a real familiarity with that. Another step would be those leaders need to start prioritizing ROI. You need to start showing your customers, whether they're internal or external customers that you're providing this service on behalf of, you need to start showing them value. There needs to be an established and realistic ROI on these products and services you're providing. Also, again, realize vendor timelines are a constraint. They are not a driver. They don't drive your decisions. They actually constrain you if you fall within the vendor-directed timeline. I would say that, if a business is driving a decision, make sure you're pulling in your technology adoption, your technology stakeholders, because they can provide an immense value on potential other options in that business as well. Pull, what I call it, you need to pull in the tech. Tech is pulled in to meet those needs. You need to associate with them. So those are kind of the starting steps that I would say. An example would be, again, let's go back to the versus model. Vendor-driven is Microsoft launches Copilot. CIO directs adoption in 2025 to Copilot. That's a vendor-driven roadmap. It's very, hey, they're coming out with it. We're gonna drink the Kool-Aid and we're going in 2025. CIO says, let's adopt Copilot. Business-driven, company has a goal to reduce time to market. Evaluate whether it's Copilot for DevOps. Does it provide measurable speed improvement? Pilot it, test it, then adopt it if the ROI proves itself. That's a business-driven roadmap. So shift the perspective from don't just drink the Kool-Aid of what the vendor is telling you to do. Go and take it, break free of that. The business needs to drive that decision, and I mean business as in the business side plus IT. So the organization needs to drive that. Have a goal. We have a goal to be faster time to market. Well, does Copilot for DevOps help us provide that improvement in speed? If it does, all right, let's test it. Test goes good? All right, adopt it if your ROI is proven based on your testing. That's a business-driven roadmap.
That's all the questions I have. Let's get to some questions from our attendees. Remember, guys, you can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Let's see what we've got here. This first one here is from Al, who's wondering, Mike, Why is Microsoft forcing their customers to move to their latest technologies, cloud including, when I still haven't fully yet used what they sold me already? It's what the whole webinar is about today.
So this person obviously is feeling everything we just talked about. You know, it starts with the Microsoft product life cycle. They probably came in, sold them, oh, here's all the neat features this new product's going to do. It's owned by the vendor account teams as far as pushing timelines for proof of concept or deployment or licensing purchase. It's prioritized by their incentives and their release cycles, right? So that, you know, if they're trying to sell you something that you're still working on the older version of, you are not ready for this new product. It's not going to solve your challenges. So remember, a business-driven roadmap should treat Microsoft's roadmap as one of many inputs, one of many, not the end-all be-all. It's not the foundation. Microsoft will always push products, incentives, timelines, but your internal strategy should dictate if, when, and how you adopt that technology. So again, to go back to that person's question, that's just Microsoft. It's their sales play. It's their tactics. They're always going to do that to you, but know that you have an option. You are not forced to do so.
Okay, we've got one here from Sunny, who's wondering, how do I balance keeping my older systems running smoothly and leveraging new technologies to innovate faster?
Partners, partners, partners. That is how you do it. Simply put, you need relationships with experts out there that have customers in your similar segment, size, culture, that understand how other businesses are utilizing and consuming technology, some good, some bad, so pros and cons of all of that. Partners like US Cloud and others are out there. They can help you not only balance your internal systems, so the status quo plus the horizon. We can help with both and help stabilize that. And in a lot of cases, we can reduce the overall time for both of those on customers, because we take that burden of where the roadmap is going and educating you, so you don't have to self-learn and self-study. We educate you on that so that you can focus on the business, and you can look internally versus having to always look externally about what's the new bright shining thing coming down and how can it impact how I do work or how we're productivity or how we collaborate. Your partners do that. Lean on them for that expertise and that trusted advocate to provide you with that insight.
Okay, we've got one here. Looks like that's just about time for one more. This one is from Perry, who's wondering, what practical steps can I take to make sure I don't get locked in the next resubscription negotiation?
Well, one, divorce this co-terming philosophy of EA or your licensing agreement plus support. Divorce it. Divorce it, divorce it, divorce it. Pull them apart, negotiate those. Remember, they're two separate organizations within Microsoft. It's not one group you're dealing with. You're literally dealing with two completely separate divisions of Microsoft. So untie those, separate those, treat them as two different negotiation cycles. Yes, is the best way to go. You won't get locked in that way. The problem with that is always treat Unified as a year by year commitment. Always. That is my advice to all customers. EAs make sense doing multi-year most of the time. Understood. Unified or other customers, they will hide costs. It will go up. Remember, Unified tied to the EA, they both go up. One doesn't go down while the other goes up. They both go up. So that's just how it's designed. So looking at third party can untie that as well for your support option. If you are staying with Unified, only do 12-month, year by year agreements and commitments, because then your negotiation power goes back into your wallet, not Microsoft's. You have the power to negotiate that year over year, and those discounts are available year over year. Don't get locked into something that you know is not going to be a fixed cost over a multi-year. If that is not the case, you need to look at individual year, and that will help you in that next negotiation. The other thing is use a partner. Use the people like Directions on Microsoft or Gartner to an extent, or Infotech. These guys do this day in, day out. They know the little gotchas in the contract negotiation side of EAs in licensing. Lean on them. They can help you. And even partners like US Cloud, we can provide that EA negotiation assistance and or support. Obviously, that's what we do. We can help educate you on the things to look out for and how Microsoft pins you to those long-term commitments, which then takes away your buying power.
And that looks like that's all the time we have for this Tech Talk. Whose roadmap is it anyway? Breaking free from vendor lock-in and reclaiming control of your IT strategy. I want to thank Mike Jones. Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure for a truly informative conversation. Always great advice, really practical stuff. And many, many thanks to the folks at US Cloud for making this conversation possible. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.